Lanolin Plus presents They Stand Accused. 5 years and 7 months ago, Johnny Chalmers was born. Now, because a man named Roberts isn't dead the way everybody said he was, Johnny's future hangs in the balance. His mother, Mary, and his real father, Fred Chalmers, both seek his custody. Speaking for the mother, Attorney Meyer H. Weinstein makes his opening statement to a jury selected from our studio audience. A jury without prejudice for or against either party in this action. To Johnny, it is like a game. Grown-ups talking a lot. One of them even likes to write down words. You have to be quiet, though. You always have to be quiet. But Attorney William Wines has no intention of being quiet in his effort to win the custody of Johnny for Fred Chalmers. Presiding over this trial, this flash of evidence and fact, is Judge A. Bradley Eben of this city. Welcome to They Stand Accused. You know, sometimes a situation comes to trial that would stump even old King Solomon himself. Well, I'll see if I can explain it to you. First of all, Mary and Tom Roberts were married. So far, so good. Then Tom went overseas and was later reported dead. Later, Mary married Fred Chalmers, and they had a son. But they were all in for a big shock because Tom showed up very much alive, and the second marriage had to be annulled. Well, that made it tough for everybody concerned because they couldn't agree on the custody of the boy. So now they have all come to court asking it to decide the child's fate. Well, the worst part of it is that both the mother and the father have a reasonable claim to the boy's custody. Well, Hollis Burke has a pleasant claim to your attention right now.
Good evening. We hope you enjoy They Stand Accused, presented by the creators of Lanolin Plus beauty products. These products include Lanolin Plus lipstick, Lanolin Plus shampoo, Lanolin Plus liquid makeup, Lanolin Plus hand lotion, Lanolin Plus liquid skin cleanser, Lanolin Plus cleansing cream for dry skin, Lanolin Plus all-over body lotion, Lanolin Plus sudden date, the new instant cleanser, beautifier, and conditioner for the hair. A lifesaver when you have a sudden date. And Lanolin Plus liquid, the favorite basic beauty preparation of millions of women. The wonderful way to stop skin dryness overnight and forever keep it away through continued use.
Now back to They Stand Accused, where Attorney Weinstein brings the mother of Johnny to the stand in an effort to establish her claim for the sole custody of the boy.
Will you state your name, please?
Mary Nielsen Roberts,
Your address, please.
1459 North Dearborn.
You are the wife of Tom Roberts?
Yes, sir, I am.
I wonder if both counsel and the witness would keep their voices up and speak, that the last juror in the box will be able to hear what they say.
Thank you, Your Honor. We'll be glad to. Are you married to Tom Roberts?
Yes, sir, I am.
When was the first time you met Tom?
Well, I met Tom the first time when he came to live with the Chalmers. The Chalmers lived right next door to us in
Where
Champaign.
was that? In
Champaign,
Illinois?
Yes, sir.
Continue, please.
Well, I was just a little girl then, and I guess Tom didn't know I was next door, but I knew he was there. And he started to go to school at the university. I guess I must have only been about 14.
And let me ask you this. Was Fred Chalmers friendly with Tom?
Oh, yes, they were very good friends. They always had been very good friends. Fred kind of looked up to Tom. I guess we all did. He was, a big shot on the campus. And, just everybody in the town loved Tom.
And how did you feel about Tom?
Well, I loved him, too, but I was so young then, and I suppose kind of ugly.
And let me ask you, Mary, Did you marry Tom before or after he returned from service? Tom went into service with Fred, did they not?
Yes, they both enlisted in about, I guess 1941 at the beginning of the Pearl Harbor. And he came back in 45.
And that's when you and Tom got married?
Well, I was 24 then, and I guess he noticed me for the first time. And
he probably noticed you were more beautiful now than when you were
a little
girl
older,
with pigtails,
yes,
I presume.
Yes, sir.
Now, Mary, tell me, after you married Tom, where did you live?
Well, Tom got a very good job with a paper in Chicago, a newspaper. He's a newspaper man. And we came to Chicago, and we took a furnished apartment. Lived in Chicago.
And how long did you live with Tom there?
Well, Tom was only with me for 3 months. In January, he had another good offer from a wire service to go to Germany and to stay there until I could get there to stay with him.
You told me as a war correspondent, isn't that correct?
Yes, for the wire service.
And what did you do then while Tom was gone?
Well, I stayed in Chicago, and I waited for him to let me know when I could come and join him. And then on March 2nd, I received a wire from the State Department to tell me that Tom had been killed. He had gone over into the German section and the Russian section of Germany and been shot down.
And then you went to Champaign and renewed your acquaintance with Fred?
Well, Fred just lived next door. I had to go back and see my family. I felt so horrible. I felt I needed some companionship and that they would understand. I went back, and of course, Fred felt badly, too, because he loved Tom, and they'd always been very close. So this way, at least there were more than just one mourning him.
And tell me, when did you marry Fred?
Well, I couldn't bear Champaign too much longer. I had to come back to Chicago where Tom and I had been so happy together.
This was about a year after, or 11 months after Tom had been reported killed. Isn't that correct?
I came back to Chicago right away, but then Fred came to Chicago and lived near me, and of course, I knew them very well, so we were together quite a bit, and I married Fred in 1948.
And then Johnny was born?
Yes, Johnny was born a year after. He's 5 now.
And tell me, Mary, Johnny's 5 now?
Yes.
Tell me, when was the next time you heard from Tom, your first husband?
Well, Tom arrived back October 1st. Mrs. Chalmers had told us that she found out he was alive and he was coming to see us. Of course, it was a terrific shock, and I didn't know how I was going to feel about him. I never had forgotten him. Fred always knew that I loved Tom, and we had had a nice marriage, and I really didn't know what I was going to do when I saw Tom. I had to wait, so Fred and I just decided not to even think about it until we were all together and we were able to find out how we felt.
And then you met Tom?
Yes.
And you renewed your acquaintances, and the boy went back to you. Is that it?
Yes.
Your witness.
Is there any cross-examination, Mr. Wines?
It's your plan, isn't it, Mrs. Roberts, to take Johnny with your first husband to Rome?
Well, Tom has had this marvelous offer in Rome. It'd be a wonderful thing for all concerned, especially for Johnny.
And that will mean that Johnny won't see his father anymore, won't it?
Well, yes, it does, but now it's not good for Johnny to be in this
when was the
atmosphere
first
of
just...
I'll object to that. I think he should permit the witness to answer if the court...
She has answered, Mr.
Yes, I think
Weinstein.
she completed the answer, but in any event, in the future, permit the witness to answer, will you, Mr. Wines?
I'll permit the witness to answer, but I don't want any speeches. Now, when was the first time that you told your second husband, Fred, that you were planning to take his boy out of the United States?
Well, he came to see us one night with a present for Johnny, a Christmas present, and he saw the suitcases, and of course we had planned to tell him as soon as possible. Anyway,
You hadn't told him, had you?
Well, it had only been a couple of days that we had known about it, and we hadn't had a chance to tell him yet.
Had you made any preparations for travel, applied for passports, anything like that?
Oh, yes, we did that immediately. It was the first thing we had to do.
So you had time to plan for passports and a trip to Europe, but not time to tell your son's father that you were taking him away. Is that right?
I'll object to that as argumentative, Your Honor.
Overruled. I think it's proper cross-examination. The witness may answer.
Will you answer?
Well, we intended to tell him as soon as possible. We weren't trying to run off without letting him know. We would never do a thing like that, but... Oh, it was so tense when he was around all the time that I think both of us didn't want to face it.
When your first husband came back, you had thought he was dead and had married again in good faith. When your first husband, Fred, came back, you returned to your first husband, didn't you?
Yes, sir, I still loved him.
And without any remonstrance on the part of your second husband, Fred.
That's right.
And he let you take the boy with him, didn't he?
Yes, he
Boy was living with you.
Yes, sir.
Until he stepped in, that's your second husband, I mean, and you told him all of a sudden that you were planning to take the boy to Europe.
Yes, sir.
And then he took the boy home with him.
Yes, Tom and Fred had an awful fight. They said some horrible things to one another. Johnny wasn't there.
Well, they did take the boy home.
Yes, he became angry and took the boy. The boy was playing at the Wilsons just down the hall, and he went over and took him, and without even telling me.
And he's been with his father ever since?
Yes, he has.
And your father's made no effort to remove him outside the jurisdiction of this court or take him to some other part of the country where you can't find him, has
That's objected to the court, please.
Goes to...
Sustained. He's here, I think. I think the jury will notice that.
Well, at least he hasn't planned to take him out of the country, has he?
Well, I don't know. I haven't talked to him about it.
But you have.
Well, we haven't taken him yet. We made plans for it, and we intended to do it the correct way by telling the father and making sure that
You do intend to do it if this court awards you custody in this case, don't you?
Yes, I want the boy with me. I couldn't leave him here and go.
Your husband is working in Chicago now, isn't he?
Yes, he is. But this would be better for Johnny over there.
Stopping to go to another country, isn't he?
Any redirect, Mr. Weinstein?
No redirect, Your Honor.
You may step down then, Mrs. Roberts. Have you any further witnesses
Yes,
for
Your
the
Honor.
particular-
Your husband, Tom. You take the stand, Tom.
You raise your right hand, please. You do solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth to help you?
I do.
Be seated, please.
Will you state your name, please?
Tom Roberts,
And your address.
1459 North Dearborn.
You're the husband of Mary who just testified?
That's quite correct.
Tom, let me ask you, how long you've been in this country prior to today?
I've been in this country since October 1st, 1954.
Now, if I could recall correctly, you were a captive on the other side of the ocean?
Yes, that's correct. I was a prisoner of the Germans behind the Iron Curtain, prisoner of the Russians behind the Iron Curtain most of the time in the eastern zone of Germany.
Now,
For 7 years.
How long? For 7 years, Tom. And while you were there, what treatment was accorded you?
Well, it wasn't very pleasant, I can tell you that. I'm not allowed to say too much of that because I might implicate too many people that are yet behind the
I
Iron Curtain.
understand. You understand, Tom, or did you know that you were considered dead while you were over there?
I was informed that so far as the free world knew, I was dead.
You understood that?
That's right.
Now, Tom, let me ask you, when did you return?
I was permitted to get in touch with the outside world on September 28th. My first move at that time was to attempt to get in touch with my wife. I called her at her last known address, and they had no record of her whereabouts, so I called her parents, the Nielsen's, in Champaign. It was then that I learned the news that my wife had married my best friend and the best man at my wedding, Fred Chalmers, and that they had a 5-year-old son. The Nielsens suggested that I call Fred's mother, Mrs. Chalmers, who was then living in Chicago, so that she might break the news to
I
them.
object to what was suggested. Let him tell what he did.
Sustained. Just state what you did, please.
Very good. I called Mrs. Chalmers, and she promised to inform my wife and Fred of my whereabouts, that I was alive. I immediately caught a plane from Zurich to Paris and straight on to Chicago.
Now, what was your reaction? Had you made any decision regarding Mary or Fred?
Well, at first I was pretty angry. I was pretty hurt to think that I'd been forgotten. But then I realized...
Object to what decisions he made.
Sustained. Jury will disregard.
Tell what he said and did.
Just tell us what you said and did, or reactions there.
All right. right. By the time I got to Chicago, I got to Chicago, took a taxi cab to the Chalmers apartment.
And what happened then, Tom?
I walked up the front walk. I was pretty hesitant, but I rang the doorbell, and Mary opened the door. We stood in the foyer, I don't know how long. We were in each other's arms. Then we realized that Fred was waiting for us. We stepped in to meet him. It was then that I met Johnny for the first time. There was a great deal of tension, an atmosphere of tension. Here was a man who had been my best friend, had been the best man at my wedding, and now was married to Mary, who had been my wife. There was an impossible situation between us. I felt this, and so I only stayed about an hour and left.
Now tell me, Tom, did you decide on anything at that time?
Not at that time. The next day, Mary arranged to meet with me, and it was at that time, when we had lunch the next day, that she informed me that she could no longer stay as Fred's wife as long as I was alive. And so we went back together, and on October 14th, the marriage was annulled between Fred and Mary.
You came to my office, and I filed a
Yes.
complaint. Now, will you tell the court and jury briefly what happened on December the 15th, Tom, please?
On December the 15th, Mary and I were packing in anticipation of going to Rome, where I had an assignment for my wire service. And Fred walked in with a present, a Christmas present for Johnny. He saw us packing and asked us what we were doing, and we told him. And he said, did this mean that we were taking his boy away from him out of the country? I said he had to be realistic, that I had lost 7 years. I had my life to make up, and I had a family to support at this time. He told me that I couldn't take his son out of the country and away from where he could see him, that this was no way to treat his son. I told him then that he couldn't give me orders, that I'd been taking orders where I couldn't answer back for too long to take them when I could do something about it. And one word led to another, and we wound up in a fist fight.
And Fred took the child away and left.
That's correct.
Your witness.
Mr. Roberts, you are now employed by wire service in Chicago, Illinois.
Yes, sir.
Are you not?
Yes, sir.
And you could continue with that wire service, could you not?
Oh, yes.
You haven't been discharged.
No, sir.
And if you did continue with that wire service, Johnny could see both his mother and his real father, not to mention his grandmother and yourself. Is that not true?
Well, that's quite true.
And nevertheless, you have undertaken to make arrangements to take this boy to Rome. Is that not true?
That's quite true.
Do you consider Europe a safe place in which to raise this lad at this time?
Well, if I didn't consider Rome a safe place for Mary's son, I certainly wouldn't take them there.
You do consider it a safe place?
Yes.
Did you find Europe a safe place?
Well,
I'll object to
unfortunately, I
that,
didn't.
Your Honor.
Sustained.
Very well. You don't know how long you'll be in Rome, do you?
No.
Or where else you may be assigned?
No, I'm open to any assignment they give me.
And we'll take it.
Yes. I feel it my duty to take whatever assignment is given me. This is my job, and I have a certain amount of responsibility to my profession and to my country. I feel that this is the job I can do best.
Now, it pays more money, doesn't it?
It certainly does, and I'm glad of that,
And
because
that's
I want
well.
to take care of my family. I want to give them the best.
Did you ever have any conversation with Fred as to whether, if he stayed in this country, he would be willing to contribute to the support of his son, even though he was living with you and your mother?
That's objected to, Your Honor.
No, I think it's proper. Overruled.
Well, I certainly don't anticipate any time in the future when I won't be able to take care of my son.
Not if you go to Rome at a high salary.
That's right.
Have you made any study plans for his education in Rome?
Well, I understand there are very fine educational facilities for English-speaking children in Rome at this time.
When did you first tell Tom, if you ever did tell him, Fred, if you ever did tell him that you intended to take his boy away from him and away from the country in which he was born.
Well, it was unfortunate that we were...
Well, it was that night that he came and called on you, wasn't it?
That's correct.
All right, now, when did you first tell Johnny that you were going to take him away from his
told
father
him
in the country?
immediately. We told him immediately that I had this offer and that he would be going to Europe.
And he was happy about it.
Going to see the world.
He was happy and looked forward to it.
Very much so.
And he didn't mind leaving his father.
That's objected to, Your Honor, as to whether he did or
All right, I'll withdraw it. I shouldn't ask what the boy meant. Now, did he give any indication or did he say anything about being willing to leave his father?
No, sir. We'd been trying to figure out what was the best way to break the news to both Johnny and to Fred, that they wouldn't be
Pretty
seeing
tough
each other.
problem, wasn't it, to
Certainly
figure out
was.
how to break news that you're taking the boy away from his father into another country?
Of course it was. I
Took a
wish
little time.
some other
Just-
way of breaking this news had been allowed than it was that night.
You'd known Fred a long time.
I'd known him since 1934.
A friend of his before you were a friend of the girl that you both married.
A very good friend.
That's all.
I'd just like to ask one question, Mr. Roberts.
Yes, sir.
Now, you're a foreign correspondent.
Yes, sir.
Is your assignment in Rome as permanent as that sort of thing is?
Well, nothing is terribly permanent. I am assigned there to cover politics and to cover interesting news assignments that break in Rome. I may be transferred.
Thank you. That's all.
That's all, Tom.
Thank you.
No further...
Is there anything further from the petitioner?
None, Your Honor.
You rest.
Does a sudden date throw you for a loop like this? Well, a last-minute engagement with no time for a shampoo or beauty shop appointment is enough to set anybody topsy-turvy. And that's when the wonderful new Lanolin Plus product for the hair, Sudden Date, really comes to the rescue. Now, all you do is spray a very small amount of Sudden Date through your hair and then brush it vigorously. And if you use it as directed, the results should be like this. Excessive oiliness and dirt brush out in seconds. Curls tighten and loose ends find their proper place. Your hair is sparkling thanks to the silicones in Sudden Date. It's an entirely new product. The Sudden Date contains no lacquer and no stickiness. It's a lifesaver when you have a sudden date. So get yours today. It's only $1.25 plus tax wherever cosmetics are sold.
Attorney William Wines brings Johnny's grandmother to the stand, hoping to give the court some kind of an idea as to what sort of home the boy would have if his father is given custody.
What is your name?
Marion Chalmers.
You are the mother of Fred Chalmers, the respondent in this case.
Yes.
You believed yourself for some years to be the mother-in-law of the woman who believed herself to be his wife. And you are the grandmother of Johnny Chalmers, the little lad who was in the courtroom until we started to take the evidence in this case. Is that true? The Nielsen family, that's your family, with Mary, your daughter, lived next door to the Chalmers family in Champaign, Illinois. That's true, isn't it?
Yes, we lived next door to Mary and her
And
family.
Mary and your son grew up together.
That's right.
Now, when did Tom Roberts first come into the lives of you people? You and your son and Mary.
Well, he first came to our house to live when he was going to the university.
All right, now, what was the relation at that time, if you can tell us, briefly, between these three young people? Mr. Thomas Roberts, Mr. Frederick Chalmers, and Miss Mary Nielsen.
Well, when Tom was staying at our house, he didn't know Mary too well. Mary would come in and out like she had always done. But Fred and Mary were, my son and Mary were more or less like brothers and sisters.
Let me ask you, is your husband living?
No.
When did he die?
He died when Fred was 9 years old.
What effect did that seem to have on Fred?
Well, if the court please, I have no objection to some leading questions, but he's asking too many leading
Well,
questions.
we'll permit him this one, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You may ask.
Well, it deeply affected Fred. He felt lost and deserted. And even up until a few days ago, I thought his loss of his father had passed and become dim in his memory. But he said, Mother, he said, isn't it strange, but I lost my father, and now my son is going to lose his.
Well, I'll disclaim that conversation, Your Honor. Now, let me ask you, Mrs. Nielsen, when did you first hear that Tom Roberts was dead?
Well, Mrs. Nielsen had called me. I think you're confusing me. I'm Mrs. Chalmers. Mrs. Nielsen had called me to tell me that Tom had called her and that he was alive, and she thought it would be a good idea if I'd go over and tell Fred and Mary, because it'd be awful to tell them such a thing on the phone.
And you were the one who broke the news to
Yes.
Fred and Mary that Tom was not dead. What happened at that time?
Well, I went to their apartment. I told them to please sit down, that I had something very shocking to tell them. And I told them Tom was alive, and I looked at Mary, and here she had a look of joy in her eyes, and Fred, he was full of despair. It was a terrible thing to have to tell them. I couldn't stand it, so I left the room and went into where little Johnny was sleeping. I looked at him lying there so innocently and wondered what all this was going to do to him.
Now, one more question. If the court awards the custody of Johnny Chalmers to his father, and if his mother and her husband go to Rome, can you give Johnny the care of a woman in the home? Can you stay home with him and look after him?
Of course. Why, I've taken care of Johnny lots of times when Mary and Fred went on vacations. I'd have him for 2 weeks at a time. And, well, after all, I am his grandmother.
That's all, Your Honor, with this witness.
Mr. Weinstein, any questions for the petitioner?
Yes, Your Honor. Miss Chalmers, see, you're trembling and you're scared about my cross-examining you. I'm no ogre. We try to do our duty. All we want is certain facts to determine the aspects of this case. Now, let me ask you, Mrs. Chalmers, Freddie was your only child, wasn't he?
That's right.
And you loved Freddie very much?
Deeply.
And when he was 9 years old, you say his father died, and you raised him both as a father and a mother, isn't that
Yes.
correct? And you also stated that whatever Freddie wanted, he could have as far as you're concerned.
Well, anything within reason, I give a child, yes.
Now, how did you feel about the marriage between Fred and Mary?
Well, at first I was a little doubtful about how successful it would be because, well, Fred had always adored Mary, but I knew Mary had sort of a knight in shining armor in her mind, one of those things. And when they got married, I was a little doubtful, as I say, but then after they were married for a year, and especially when the baby came, why, Fred was so happy with little Johnny, and so was Mary, that, well, it became a perfect marriage, an ideal marriage.
Well, let me ask you, Mrs. Chalmers, can you picture a situation where it wouldn't be absolute torture for your son to see Johnny and see the resemblance of Johnny to his mother and not see his mother? Wouldn't that be torture to you?
I object, Your
And
Honor.
torture to your son?
Speculation as to whether
Just a moment,
torture-
please. What is the
Yeah,
grounds
I
of the
object,
objection?
Your Honor. The objection calls for conclusion, speculation, whether it be torture.
Sustained.
If the court please, I think it is a proper question only because he asked for reactions on the part of this mother, and I'm entitled to the same reactions.
Well, you're now asking for the reaction on the part of the child.
No, not the
I
child.
sustain the objection.
The son, Fred, I meant, not the child, Johnny.
Well, the reaction of someone else in any event.
All right, Your Honor. Now, Mrs. Chalmers, you stated that you were dubious about this marriage as a whole between Fred and Mary, didn't you?
Well, in a way, because, Fred adored Mary, but she took him so casually all the time, and in fact, I was surprised that she finally accepted him. But I was very happy. I loved Mary almost like my own daughter.
And you state that you adored your son, didn't you?
Yes.
You admit that Mary adored her son, didn't you? Don't you?
Yes,
You
I'm
admit
sure
that?
she does.
Mrs. Chalmers, how can you, loving a child the way you do, think of or try to assist your son from taking away Mary's boy, whom she loves and she adores?
Anybody. She's testifying and truthfully answering the questions that are put to her.
Objection sustained.
Well, the boy is with her, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
No further questions, Your Honor.
You may step down, Mrs. Chalmers.
Howdy, you all. You know, I guess you're probably wondering, what in the world a Western outfit like this has to do with Lanolin Plus products? And I can tell you. I have played, I guess, in, probably 100 or more Western pictures, and of course, in every Western picture, there's a big fight. Well, now, believe me when I tell you that portions of those fights can get pretty rugged. You're fighting on splintery floors or a dirt street, and it can be murder on your hands. So if you're smart, you use hand lotion. I did. Long before I had anything to do with this program, I used Lanolin Plus hand lotion, simply because it seemed to protect my hands better.
You know, you're right, Jim. You see, Lanolin Plus hand lotion gives more lasting protection to the hands because of the penetrating action of Lanolin Plus. It rubs into the skin, not just over it, so that it actually makes the skin softer and smoother. And, you know, Jim, I'll bet your cowboy fight scenes aren't any harder on the hands than daily exposure to harsh detergents and harsh soaps and weather changes and work. And, you know, Lanolin Plus hand lotion is the only really good protection against that I have found. And besides that, you know, Lanolin Plus hand lotion is the only hand lotion in the world that contains Lanolin Plus. The handy applicator pump that delivers just the right amount is free with every bottle. So get Lanolin Plus hand lotion, only $1 plus tax wherever cosmetics are sold.
Now comes Fred Chalmers, Johnny's real father. Though normally mild-mannered, he welcomes this chance to fight for the custody of his boy and prevent his leaving this country for Rome.
Wines, you ready to proceed?
Thank you, Your Honor. Will you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury your name and age, please?
Fred Chalmers, 35.
Your business, sir?
I'm in the insurance business.
You are the father of Johnny Nielsen Chalmers, are you not?
Yes, sir, I am.
You were born in Champaign in the house next to the Nielsen home.
Yes, sir, I was.
And have known Mary Nielsen as long as you can remember, is that not?
As long as I've lived.
Not quite as long.
Not
You're a
quite.
little older than she. About
That's
3
right.
years, isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
Now, and you met Tom Roberts when you were a freshman and he was a senior in the University of Illinois down there. That's true, is it not?
Yes, it is, sir.
He took a room as a student roomer or lodger in your mother's home.
Yes, sir.
Your father had died when you were 9 years old and your mother took in roomers.
Yes, sir.
And it was through you, was it not, that he met Mary Nielsen?
Yes, sir, it was.
And the three of you were friends and nobody was serious up until 1941, the inception of the Second World War. Is that right?
Well, serious, sir?
Honor, please. It appears to me that counsel is doing the testifying. He's putting the answers in the witness's mouth.
Mr. Strange, you are leading the charge.
I know, I didn't realize that there was any dispute about it, but you were all friends until 1941.
Yes, sir, we were.
In 1941, you and Tom went to war.
Yes, sir, we did.
When did you get back from the war?
Well, I was discharged, medical discharge, and
Excuse me, I didn't get that last question.
When did he get back from the war?
When did he...
That's the witness.
I returned in September of 1943 with a medical discharge received as a basis of injuries in the South Pacific.
And when did Tom return from the war?
I believe it was late 1945.
And it was after that that he and Mary were married.
Yes, sir. Tom had gone to Chicago and come down to visit my mother and myself in Champaign, and they
Were you present at the wedding?
Yes, sir. I was the best man.
When did you first hear that Tom Roberts was no longer living?
Well, it was shortly after the 1st of March in 1947.
And after that, you married Mary.
Some 15 months later, yes, sir.
And 15?
Yes, sir.
And then you came to Chicago.
Then we came to Chicago, yes.
When was Johnny born?
Well, Johnny was born in June of 1948.
Now, tell me something about how you and Johnny got along together.
Well, we were, by nature of the insurance business that I have, I was able to spend a great deal of time with Johnny, perhaps more so than an average father working 8 hours a day. We spent a great deal of time reading to him. He enjoyed that, took him to ball games, to the park.
When did you first learn that there was a plan to take him to Europe?
Well, on December 15th of this year.
When Tom came back, had you ever remonstrated with Tom or Mary as to Mary's going back to Tom?
Well, we sort of had an agreement, sir, that after the initial shock, to try to talk this thing out and see where all three parties stood.
The boy was with you until you heard that they were going to take him to Europe.
That is right, sir.
Anything further, Mr. Wines?
Not with this witness.
Mr. Weinstein?
Fred, in your opinion, was Mary a good mother to the child?
Yes, sir, she was.
Was Tom, as far as you know, good to the boy?
Well, I'm hardly in a position to judge. Johnny never said anything to the contrary.
Johnny didn't say that Tom mistreated him, did he?
No, sir, he didn't.
Now, during the time when Tom was reported dead, and you were taking Mary out, wasn't it true, Fred, that on many of these occasions she rebuffed your advances and told you that she was still in love with Tom and could think of no other man?
Well, we had discussed it. There were not a number of proposals, if that's what you mean, sir. Mary accepted the first serious proposal of marriage, but
did she tell you that she was still in love with Tom?
Yes, sir, she did.
That is true, isn't it?
That is true.
Now, let me ask you, Fred, isn't it true that on one occasion you offered, after Tom returned and they had been living, Mary and Tom had been living together with Johnny, you told Mary that, as far as you were concerned, that Tom could adopt the boy. Isn't that true?
No, sir. No, sir.
Well, isn't it true that you told Mary that an ideal arrangement for you would be for you to have the boy 6 months and Mary to have the boy 6 months?
That is correct, sir.
That is correct.
Yes.
And if that arrangement was agreed to, you would be happy with that kind of an arrangement, wouldn't you?
Yes, sir, I would.
Now, let us go back a little and ask you this. You always wanted Mary, didn't you?
I suppose so, sir.
You felt frustrated when Tom started courting Mary quite seriously, didn't you?
Well, guess you might put it that way, sir.
Mr. Witness, I don't see anything to laugh at. This is rather a serious matter. Were you or were you not?
Well, if you mean impairing my business and my job or anything, no, sir. It did not go quite that deep.
It's funny because it compared a lot of things. Now, at that time, you were very resentful when Mary married Tom.
No, sir, I wasn't resentful.
You weren't happy about it, were you?
No, sir.
Now, isn't it true at the altercation on December the 15th that when you fought with Tom, there was bitterness and hatred in your heart? Isn't that true?
Well, the bitterness perhaps developed after... I did not go there with bitterness in my heart, necessarily. It developed into that, and everything years past came out at that particular time.
Just answer Mr. Wines.
Yes, sir.
Wasn't there always a tenseness between the three of you when you met since Tom's return?
Yes, sir, there was.
And let me ask you, Fred, isn't it true that when you took Johnny, after this quarrel, when you took Johnny, that you had vengeance in your heart and hatred in your heart?
No, sir, it's not.
You had no intention of taking Tommy before then, did you?
No, sir.
What caused you to suddenly develop the desire to take Tommy?
Sir, I wanted to keep the boy with me. I didn't want him to go out of the country until this was settled by some, in custody, awarded to someone.
Well, then who told you to take the law upon yourself?
Well, look, inasmuch as there was no decision, sir, I felt...
That objection is well taken. On the authority of People versus Billy Wilson, I sustain it.
I'll withdraw it, Your Honor. You did take the law into your own hands, did you not?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chalmers? You didn't return the boy at all, did you?
No, sir, only to notify them that I had the boy.
That is all, no further.
Anything further, Mr. Wines?
No, Your Honor.
Do you have any further witnesses?
No further
You
witnesses.
rest for the petitioner? For the respondent, I believe.
Court, please. I would like to put on one rebuttal witness, if I may.
Very briefly.
Just one question, Your Honor.
Very good.
Very
May proceed.
to the issue. You're the same Mary Roberts who previously testified.
Yes.
Mary, I want to ask you one question. Did you agree to let Fred take the boy 6 months and you're to have the boy 6 months? Would you agree to that kind of an arrangement?
No, I wouldn't. I couldn't give Johnny up for 6 months at a time. I don't think I should be expected to. What good would it have just to have him for 6
further
months?
testimony.
That is all, Mary.
All right. Anything
That's
further?
all.
You may step down. Nothing further from either side. Are you gentlemen prepared to proceed? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, by agreement of counsel, Mr. Wines, representing the respondent, will open, and Mr. Weinstein, representing the petitioner, will close. Mr. Wines?
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court, Mr. Weinstein. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you, as at this approaching Christmas season, you bring to this court your intelligence, your wisdom, and I am sure your compassion, because this case needs intelligence, wisdom, and compassion. The facts are very simple. They're starkly simple. They're tragic. What are those facts? Mary Nielsen, a nice girl, now a nice young woman, fell in love with Tom Roberts. A lot of sympathy for Tom. He's been 7 years in a concentration camp. Perhaps we can't expect him to act as you or I would act. She gets word that he's dead. Believing that word, she marries his best friend, the man who was best friend at her wedding. It turns out that Tom isn't dead, and he comes back. Fred realized that he wasn't Tom's wife, though neither he nor Mary knew that. He made no remonstrance. When he knew that a boy normally belongs with his mother, I don't gainsay that, a little 5-year-old boy, he let Mary take the boy away from him and live with him, with her and her first husband, only real husband in Chicago, until a night came when he found out that Tom Roberts and Mary, without even having told him, so they say they intended to, and no doubt did, were going to take that boy not only away from his father, away from his friends, away from the country in which he was born, and take him to a foreign country. Tom Roberts himself knows what it is better than any of us, the dangers of living in a foreign country. Yet he wants to take, not his son, but his best friend's son, away from his best friend, away from the boy's father, away from the land that you and I love, and transport him beyond the seas to a destiny that we can only imagine and conjecture. In spite of the fact that he not only can get, but now has a job in Chicago, and with a little unselfishness can stay here where his boy can have both father and mother. I say, find the issues in favor of Fred Chalmers.
Mr. Weinstein.
Please, Mr. Weinstein. Ladies and gentlemen of this jury, counsel is well noted for his brilliant talks and for his oratorical ability. I don't intend to be an orator before you, but I just want to review just one or two of the facts that appeared before you. You heard the testimony. You're as intelligent as I am, perhaps more so. You've seen and heard the witnesses. One of the factors, remember, and I can't yell as loud as Mr. Winans, but I want to impress this factor, that the father says to the mother, you take the boy 6 months, I'll take the boy 6 months. Like the old story of King Solomon, who said to both parents, I'll cut the baby in half. Take the boy for 6 months from the loving care of a mother. Then the other factors, remember. I asked both the grandmother and Fred Chalmers, both of them, is Mary and was Mary a good mother to Johnny? And is Tom a good father to the boy, a foster father? Both of them answered without any hesitation. Yes, no question about it. And ladies and gentlemen, we are interested primarily with one factor. One factor and one factor only. The best interest and the best welfare of this boy. Who is best fitted to take care of a little infant such as that? The issues, it appears to me, is not between the mother and the father. The issues here appear to be between the mother and her mother-in-law. Who shall take care of the infant? Not the mother or the father, but the mother or the mother-in-law. Because Fred certainly is going to work during the day, and who's going to take care of that child? His mother. I don't deny she's a very fine little lady. She's raised Fred very beautifully. But that does not take away from the fact that nobody can raise a child like a loving and a doting parent, a mother. Take away from a child a mother love, and you remove something that's of such great importance. And ladies and gentlemen, talking about a great importance, your decision in this case is not as simple as it might appear just to affecting these individuals. It may affect hundreds and thousands of other cases. Not similar to this, where a father unexpectedly returns, but where broken up homes and there's a child to be decided. His future is to be decided. Where does he go? To the mother or to the father? Your decision, the decision in this case, will bear great importance. And ladies and gentlemen, I say to you, I leave it to your good common sense to your judgment, to your conscience, to determine that one question. Not a question in favor of my client, not a question in favor of the defendant, a question in favor of that child. Put that child where that child belongs. Put him in the custody of his mother. That's where he should stay. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in habeas corpus cases such as this one, the decision is made by the court, not by the jury. But in this case, the court has requested your advisory verdict upon the issue presented by the pleadings and the evidence. If you find from the evidence that it is for the best interests of Johnny Chalmers that his custody be awarded to the petitioners, Tom and Mary Roberts, you will so find and advise the court. If you do not so find, you will find and advise the court that the custody of Johnny Roberts should remain with the respondent, Fred Chalmers. I have prepared what I call two forms of verdict, which you will take to the jury room and, having voted, sign the proper one. Mr. Bailiff?
Come this way, please, and will you watch the step?
The jury, and the jury alone, determines the outcome of each episode of They Stand Accused. Now, this jury, which is selected from members of our studio audience, deliberates in secret on the basis of the evidence and the testimony. We hope that you, our audience at home, will reach your own decision in this and every case to come before us. So will you write to us in care of the Dumont Network, Chicago 11, Illinois.
Well, that does it. She's finished. And not bad.
Why, it's beautiful.
But that's not a portrait of me. Poirot, you're a fraud. I'm not that pretty.
On the contrary, mademoiselle, the beauty on that canvas is all yours. You see, I paint you not just as you really are, and not as you have let yourself become through carelessness.
But I'm not careless. You've just made me too youthful.
Ah, mademoiselle, misses the little lines and crow's feet, but they do not belong on your face. Believe me, you could soften them almost as easily as I have done in painting your portrait. Mademoiselle, they are as unattractive and wrong on your face as the oily shine on the face of your friend, Madame Carrière, whom I painted only last month. You would expect me to paint the greasy, shiny face just because she has neglected her skin?
But she has an oily skin.
Oui, and you have a dry skin. Neither condition is a part of your natural beauty. It is not you at your best. Mademoiselle, the alluring beauty on that canvas is you, as you could be, as you should be.
How?
Well, if I am to paint you as a beauty, I guess I must help you to be as beautiful as your portrait. Here.
Lanolin plus liquid.
Oui.
Whether your problem is skin dryness or skin oiliness, Lanolin plus liquid can end your worries. Facial lines, crow's feet, uneven makeup, rough skin texture are the common signs of skin dryness. Now, when the skin is too oily, an unpleasant shininess and a facial attraction to dirt and grime are usually apparent. The penetrating action of Lanolin plus liquid supplies needed cholesterols and esters to dry skin. Lanolin plus liquid will stop skin dryness overnight and will free you from dry skin worries as long as you continue its use. You see, oily skin is caused by an excess of a substance called sebum. Now, Lanolin plus liquid dissolves this clogging excess sebum so that you can just tissue it away. Then, Lanolin plus liquid mixes with the remaining natural oils on your skin and, by nature, deshines your skin.
So whether your skin is dry or oily, why don't you make the Lanolin Plus skin test? Now, here's how you do it. Before you go to bed at night, apply Lanolin Plus liquid to one half of your face from the forehead to the neck. Leave the other side of your face as it is. Then the next morning, apply your usual makeup in the usual way. Don't favor either side of your face. The skin on the Lanolin Plus side should be soft and smooth and lovely. Contrast its loveliness with the effect on the other side of your face. But go a step beyond your own judgment. Ask that man in your life whose admiration you want most to caress your face with his fingertips. Let him tell you which side is most attractive to his touch. He'll find it instantly.
If you want your skin to be softer and smoother, if you want a fresher, more youthful look, just ask for Lanolin Plus Liquid wherever cosmetics are sold. The price is only $1 plus tax, and a fortune couldn't buy more beauty benefit for your skin. Now back to the courtroom where the jury is preparing to offer its verdict.
Mr. Foreman, has the jury reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor.
Would you be good enough to hand it to the bailiff, please? The verdict is as follows. We, the jury, find and advise the court that the custody of the relator, Johnny Roberts, should be awarded to the petitioner, Mary Roberts. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it's been a hard decision to take this child from his father to you. I have the final responsibility, however, in this case, and I know of you have given this decision everything that you had. However, I disagree with you. And in this particular instance, I am going to award the child to his father with the understanding that the court will retain jurisdiction. And when, and in the event, Mrs. Roberts returns to this country, then we will reopen the matter at that particular time. And when she is here, I assure her she shall have full right at all times of visitation of this child. Thank you very much for your efforts here. Court stands adjourned.
What's the story behind this full date book? Well, it's simple. Soft, smooth lips. Intriguing, desirable lips. Lips of brilliant, lasting beauty. Lanolin Plus lipstick is the only lipstick with the living beauty colors of youth, plus Indelium to help those colors stay on your lips longer, plus Lanolin Plus to keep your lips soft and smooth and asked for. So get your Lanolin Plus lipstick, only $1 plus tax, wherever cosmetics are sold.
Next week on They Stand Accused, a juvenile delinquent implicated in a robbery and a murder stands trial for his life. They Stand Accused has originated live from Chicago through the facilities of station WGN-TV in association with the Dumont Television Network. Any resemblance of characters in tonight's cast to any persons living or dead is purely coincidental. Gowns by Bonwit Teller.
This is the Dumont Television Network.